My name is Gerald Addison. I am one of the chefs and owners at Bammy's restaurant in the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. I have been cooking in D.C. since I was 15 years old, so for the last 17 years. And then I've kind of lived all over the place as well. We opened this restaurant almost a year ago. In 2 weeks will be our 1-year anniversary, which is pretty cool. We've been talking about Caribbean food for a long time. We've always really loved it. We always felt that it was sort of underrepresented. We spent a bunch of time traveling around the Caribbean, most recently in Jamaica, and our chef de cuisine and one of our partners here is from Jamaica. I think it's really interesting because of all the different people that have kind of like come through there. There's a huge African influence, Chinese influence, Indian influence, and then all the kind of ingredients that go along with it being in the tropics kind of make it this incredible melting pot that's really unlike anything else. And it really varies quite a bit from island to island, and it's just been, I think it's really fascinating. First restaurant job here was at Restaurant Nora, which is no longer as of 2 years ago. It's in DuPont. I worked there for 3 or 4 years and moved to New York after that. I went to school in New York and lived in New York for probably 4 or 5 years. I came back here for a little bit. I lived in California and cooked in the Bay Area. I came back here again and then lived and cooked in Baltimore. And then most recently I was the chef and one of the owners at Maidon Restaurant in DC, and up until winter 2019 when we were getting ready to open this restaurant. I used to do a fair amount of like graffiti, and I really enjoyed that for a while, and then like kind of broke into like using spray paint and like other means of art. It just never really felt like a realistic career choice for me. So I just never really felt like I was great at it. Yeah, my parents have owned an art gallery since I was born. It's kind of always what I've been around. I think I was always attracted by the creatives that were around. There were a lot of different artists. For a long time, I was interested in pursuing a career in visual art. I think eventually I got discouraged from that because I didn't think that I was very good. I think being around art all the time has definitely influenced me. I think my parents have a very specific taste that definitely influenced the art that I like now, and try to interact with lots of artists in the area still. They like a lot of different stuff. My grandfather was an ornithologist, and he studied birds, and he spent a lot of time in India, so there's a lot of old Indian art at their house, so I really like that. They have a fair amount of stuff from Tibet as well. They did a show of 18th century Tibetan art when I was probably 12 or 13, So we spent a lot of time in Nepal as they were like collecting stuff from a couple people who are big collectors there. So I've always had a huge affinity for Tibetan art and still have a fair amount in my house. My dad really likes black and white photography, and I think, I definitely have an affinity for that. I'm a huge fan of like Richard Avedon and portraiture. Now we are in the process of hiring a muralist to do a bunch of stuff inside and trying to figure out exactly what we want, and that's been kind of a process. When we opened, we had kind of lofty ambitions and had a lot of things that we wanted to do, and then the nature of opening in the pandemic we had to kind of put a back seat on that for a little while. But as things are opening back up and business is picking up a little bit closer to where we expected, we're kind of working on that again. When I was younger, I really thought of cooking as an art, and it was kind of like a way of, as I shifted away from trying to pursue a career in visual art, I kind of thought of cooking as artistic and was a great creative outlet. I think the older I get, the more appreciation I have for like the craft side of cooking. I really like the idea of having to do something hundreds, if not thousands of times, and like the forever pursuit of perfecting something. I get a lot of gratification out of that. I think of it less and less as artistic, and now I'm like really focused on trying to get better at the craft of cooking. I've probably spent the most time cooking in the Middle East, as far as abroad. I was really heavily influenced by a lot of old calligraphy work in the Middle East, and I just think it's really beautiful, and I've always been really attracted to it. And then kind of coming back to being interested in graffiti as a kid, like seeing people take Arabic calligraphy and like turn that into like slightly like graffiti style stuff, I thought was really cool and really interesting and super different from what you would see here. I think I'm just generally influenced by people kind of creating art wherever. And I think that's one of the big things I really liked about graffiti, is that it's just like anybody can pick up a can of spray paint and do it, whether or not you're good. Some of the people I know who were fairly successful in it weren't necessarily the best artists, but they were just willing to go for it and wanted to put their name everywhere. That was never my biggest interest. Like, I just wanted to get good at it. I didn't really want to have stuff all over the place if it wasn't gonna be aesthetically pleasing, at least to me. So that was kind of a big thing that I kind of fell into. But I kind of always appreciated that, and I think with cooking, I really like that it's a very seemingly even playing field. Like, anybody can start doing it. I think to be really great, you just need to put in a lot of work. And I've known a lot of people who just kept going for it over and over and over again and got great because they put in the work. I don't think that I'm necessarily like a particularly naturally talented person at it, but I've just, kept doing it over and over. I've cut so many onions in my life. I wish I could figure out how many, but so many thousands. The majority of tattoos that I have are influenced by American folk art. A lot of the kind of like old-timey tattoos from that, sailors and Marines and stuff. It's sort of the American traditional style. Has a heavy influence in like old carnival stuff and boards, and I really like that. My mother's really into American folk art, and she hates tattoos, and I try to tell her that her love of American folk art heavily influenced like the style of tattoos that I like. She doesn't really go for that. It still bumps her out. She asks me often on Christmas if I'll stop getting tattoos, and I try to tell her at this point, like, what do you think? Like, it's already kind of happened. Yeah, it's sort of pacifying. I told her I would never do my neck though. So I'm gonna hold to that. So hopefully in 5 years I don't have a photograph with my neck tattoo. But it doesn't seem very enticing to me. But I think I definitely collect tattoos the way that people might collect art. And there's a few artists who I really, really like. And I've been tattooed by a lot. Probably a couple more that I haven't yet that are pretty high up. Probably my favorite tattooer is actually in Asbury Park, where Victoria lives. And I intend to go up there this summer and get tattooed by him. He's like, his style is like kind of the American style that I like, but it's really influenced by Indian art, so I was immediately attracted to his tattoos. They're really, really clunky, and I love that. Like, I love the kind of imperfection of it. He doesn't really make an effort to make them really perfect and squeaky clean. And I think that there's something about like being able to look at something and even though there are flaws in it, it's still really beautiful. And I think it takes kind of a trained eye to appreciate why it's so nice. I don't necessarily need somebody to look at my tattoos and say they're great. Like, it's kind of more like a personal